Welcome to the Growth Fire Podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Horrigan, host of the show, where I feature inspiring business leaders from various backgrounds and industries who are willing to share their stories and their insights. Today's podcast is brought to you by Spinutech. At Spinutech, we help middle market and larger companies get more leads and customers. Hey, who doesn't want more leads and customers? The approach we take is an end-to-end digital approach. We start with your website and making sure it has the right aesthetic appeal, the right convincing content to convert visitors into action. And then once that's complete, we start to look at your advertising campaigns, paid search, organic search, paid social, organic social. We look at conversion rate optimization, email marketing opportunities, and ultimately we help you get more leads more quickly and cost effectively by optimizing your website and your digital advertising. To learn more, you can go to www.spinutech.com. That's spin, the letter U, tech.com. Thank you, Spinutech, for your partnership. Well, today's guest is Lisa Martin, and Lisa's a Chief Revenue Officer at 8x8. In Lisa's current role, she's responsible for driving and maximizing revenue growth, overseeing sales strategies, and managing the global sales team. Lisa has an extensive sales background in the technology and communication sectors, leveraging her proven ability to lead global teams to double-digit year-over-year growth. Prior to 8x8, Lisa was a VP at Flex North America, Willow, and Genesys. Lisa, welcome to the Growth Fire Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Happy to be here.
You know, Lisa, in our prior conversations and preparing for our podcast today, you remind me so much of a prior podcast guest. Her name is Melissa Massa. She's a Vice President of Sales for Lenovo Cloud Services. And I think post our podcast today, I need to make a LinkedIn introduction for the two of you. You're both two dynamic leaders in your space, running global sales teams, and I think you'd have great connections.
I would love it.
Yep. So Lisa, our guests are dying to know a little bit more about you. Maybe you could share a little bit where you grew up, maybe a little bit about your school, and maybe when little Lisa was thinking about who big Lisa was going to be, maybe what you thought your career trajectory was going to be.
That's a great question, Kevin. So a lot of people will probably be surprised to know that I grew up in a very small town in Wisconsin, and just outside of Manitowoc. And that's a town of about 30,000 people in a rural part of Wisconsin, and went to a high school where my graduating class was 74 kids.
Oh, geez.
So small town girl.
Yeah.
But I went to, off to college after high school, and I actually was studying to be a doctor.
Wow.
So I was pre-med, and I got to my junior year of college at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and decided that I couldn't imagine going to school for another 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it was going to take. So I took a microcomputers class and started taking some business classes. And it really caught my attention, and I really enjoyed technology. So fast forward, I landed in tech for the first 12 years of my career. I worked in IT organizations, primarily at financial services, and then made my way about halfway through my career of 20 some odd years into sales. Mm-hmm. So, and you kind of highlighted, the companies that I've had the privilege of and honor of working at.
Yes. I've got to double click a little deeper on some of that stuff. So you went to school to be a doctor. I went to school to be a dentist. In my junior year, I had the career shift as well. Lisa, you, I, and 90% of the guests on the Growth Fire podcast did not finish their career direction that they thought they're going to start.
It's quite common.
There's always been a pivot or a change. So feel that you're in good company, because we had some amazing past guests, and everyone ended up in a different area than what their original thought their trajectory was. But, you talked about, you got started in technology and eventually got into sales. Can you talk about the evolution of what the technology was but then found maybe a greater drive into sales? Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Oh, sure. My first real role where I was working in IT, I was actually a help desk analyst, and then I was doing network engineering work for an assisted living company. And interesting enough, one day the telecom guy quit. And my boss came to me and said, Lisa, I'll give you an extra so many $1,000s a year. And I was, in my 20s at this time. So of course I jumped at the chance. Sure. And that was my start of getting into communications and contact center. And what I learned in that moment was I got more exposure to the business and the impact that those solutions have on customers and on companies' revenue. And that really was the start, I think, of where I had that moment of seeing the intersection of you can have great technology, but it's really about the business aspect that it drives and powers that makes a difference. And so as my career evolved, I made the decision to try my foray into sales with some coaching from some great people that I worked with in financial services. And I actually became a sales engineer before I actually was a, quota carrying sales rep. And I loved it. I loved it. Yeah.
Just in my experience, Lisa, some of the people who are most successful in a technology business development career come from the engineering side. And, I love the phrase, people love to buy, but they hate to be sold to.
Absolutely.
And I think the people in business development that have the practice of the trade, who eventually maybe go into the business development side, do a much better job of being able to earn someone's trust by not trying to sell to them, but they make people want to buy. And so, I can remember when we were all kids, where we'd go into, we were in first grade. First grade was about to start, and our mom walked us into the department store, and the clerk said, "Can I help you?" And mom said, "No, we're just shopping." And Mom, we're here to buy shoes. Oh, you're here to buy shoes? Like, you're not supposed to tell them that, right?
Exactly.
So, like, we've been coached since children not to tell salespeople the truth, because we feel that's going to prevent us from, they're going to take advantage of all of that. And I think those who take that technological approach and eventually turn that into business development have strong power to be able to help buyers feel more comfortable and be successful.
Yeah, I think it starts with being able to speak their language and put the customer at the center of what you're doing. Because like I said, you can have great technology, but it's also about what does the customer need, right? How are you going to help them accomplish the business objective or solve the problem that they have or drive the outcome that they're looking for? And I think if you don't make those connections, that's where people feel like, oh, they're just trying to sell me. I always tell my team, like, be curious, ask questions, and be a human being. Like, get to know your customer. They have kids, they have lives outside of work. They're not just an IT buyer. Yeah.
Well, I think on top of that too, there can be people that only have the business development knowledge. They've been trained to be salespeople, or they're naturally born salespeople, and they may be coached to ask those questions. They really don't know if the answer was X, Y, or Z, how that connects the dots. They're just going through what their training is, and the buyer knows they're just asking those questions.
Yeah, they don't read the script.
I had a call yesterday with a large publicly traded company, a nice young account executive, asked me, 5 questions about where Tech was going, what was our growth goal this year, and he couldn't translate if I said X, Y, or Z what that meant. You could just tell it was going through the script. It was frustrating. It wasn't a sales call, but he was coached to try to ask some questions to try to flesh out if there was a sales opportunity.
Sure.
And rather than show out of respect for this young man, because he was a sharp young kid, rather than be disrespectful, and I just went through the process just to process myself kind of what some of that was, and hope that anything that I'm involved with wouldn't have that kind of experience. But when it's practice, but there isn't the true understanding underneath it, it doesn't have the same effect. When it's coming from truly trying to connect two endpoints, what is the goals and objectives? And it isn't necessarily what the client asks for, it's what they truly need. And it's fleshing out, not, am I going to give them what they just asked for? Am I going to understand what the true outcome of success looks like and be able to connect those dots? That's when I think the really well-trained technical sales people are truly super successful.
Absolutely. I agree 1,000%.
So just talk a little bit more about this advancement. So you got a chance to work the telecommunications side, then you went into sales tech support, then you went into sales. Now, eventually you had to leave this comfortable salary and go into the commission side. Talk about that.
I'm sorry. I missed that last part.
So now you go into the commission side of this. So what was the transition from I've got a fixed salary that I'm comfortable with, that I'm going to take probably a reduction in salary, but maybe you'd have some upside from commission. Can you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary, but what I will say, and I now being in sales for, better part of a decade and a half, take risks. Yes, I took a risk, and, financial risks are probably the scariest ones, especially when you're earlier in your career.
Sure.
But take risks. And I think even now I look back and I wish I would have took more risks earlier, and put myself out there more. And so I think that, for me, I looked at it as I always pushed myself, even when I was uncomfortable, to make change, to try and develop new skill sets and really evolve as a salesperson, as a sales engineer, whatever the role was, just to continue to evolve and get better and try new things. And that moving into sales from sales engineering was a big leap. It's scary because I think there's a perception that not a lot of sales engineers can be great salespeople. And I think it's maybe more myth than it is truth, but I think it's really about what you just talked about is, do you have that innate ability to make the connections between what somebody's saying, what they need, and how you can help them?
Yes.
And, I never looked back, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. My older son was in commercial banking, and he had he had a business development role, but it wasn't compensated via commission. He was trying to onboard new clients to the bank that he worked for. And he got another opportunity outside banking, which he was ready to try something differently, but the salary was half, but the commission opportunity was more than double what the salary was. And I remember asking me, Dad, I'm going to leave the salary that I have, but there's an opportunity to get double, but I got to go back to half the salary. And I'm like, well, what do you feel? He's like, Dad, I really want to bet on myself. Yeah. And I think that's the decision you have to make. And it's like you said, it's at that early stage of your career, it's a highly risky decision because you don't have a lot of savings in place. But are you ready to take that risk? His first year of income was 80% greater than what he would have made at the bank. And so he took the risk and it paid off. But he wasn't ready to take that risk a year earlier. I think he needed a little bit more experience. Yeah. And so there's probably a point in time that you feel more comfortable about it than it is maybe the first time you have the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, part of it is it's not just risk, but not thinking about it like, am I going to fail, but what do I need to do to succeed? And I think that's the way that you have to look at those types of transitions is, don't look at the negative, look at the positive.
Look at the outcome in mind. And absolutely. I think the right mindset, the wrong mindset certainly doesn't help success become easy. The right mindset doesn't make it guaranteed, but the wrong mindset probably makes it a harder struggle.
Exactly.
So Lisa, I'm going to switch gears for a little bit. So you've got this great career at a great employer, 8x8. I'd like to learn a little bit more. Who's your target market at 8x8?
Sure, absolutely. So 8x8, for those of you who may not be familiar, is a communications company. We focus on basically providing employee and customer communications tools to really optimize how employees engage, how companies engage with their end customers, very B2B focused. And our ideal customer profile are people who are looking to transform their business, evolve in how they interact with their customers and their employees. They're companies who don't have big development teams to go stitch together a bunch of solutions. And so what 8x8's focused on is building solutions that are easy to use, easy to deploy, and can bring value to the customer. We put the customer at the center of everything that we do. When we think about deploying new products and services, we've got research teams that go out and really sit down and understand what customers are looking for in the tool set that they use. And our ideal customer profile that we talk about a lot is really, it's companies that are 200 to 20,000 employees. And that product market fit of being able to have a portfolio of solutions is where we really see ourselves winning. Yeah,
that's very, very interesting. So obviously as Chief Revenue Officer, part of your role is helping onboard new clients. Can you tell us what is your primary approaches and how you try to attract the ideal customer profile? What are the ways you go to market to try to attract those clients?
Yeah, so I talked to you a little bit about this when we were preparing for this podcast, but 8x8's transforming as a company. We were very much a unified communications and collaboration centric company for a better part of 30 years. And several years ago, we really switched our strategy and started to invest heavily in contact center as a service and CPaaS as a service. And what that's done for us is really focus on the ability to deliver a platform and a portfolio that is super robust. And so the way we approach our customers is one, really understanding and again, our earlier conversation, what is the business problem they're trying to solve? What's the use case that they've got? Who's the persona that we're targeting, and really building our sales motion around that. We've retooled our business development organization and motion. You touched on just business development resources and kind of that scripted approach doesn't really work, right? And so we've taken a serious look at that. And then we're also really evolving our brand in the market because we were known as a UC company. We've had to make the right investments to change the brand perception of 8x8. And that's all a work in progress because we are transforming the company.
Wow. Yeah, that's so all this transformation is taking place. How has that made, I assume that's made more opportunity for you with like a broader product array that you can offer to your clients?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's expanded our target market immensely. I think it's given us the ability to capture more wallet share with our existing customers because we can go back in to customers that we've, earned that trust and loyalty and have conversations around how we can add even more value to their business and drive better outcomes in their business.
Yep. I guess next question, is there any, use case or case study of maybe you could want to share about a client, is having communication issues and with our implementation of our technology, those, help the company accomplish these whatever goals?
Absolutely. I think, there's a lot of them that come to mind, but there's one that really resonates with me because we all have probably as consumers live this experience. And we really talk about how we compose our solutions into a very easy to use, as I said, to deploy earlier solution. And we had this housing authority in the UK. And if you think about a housing authority, they're having to service, plumbing issues, the doors broke, whatever it may be. And what we were able to do is bring together UC, contact center, messaging, video, and they were able to deploy a solution that allowed them to do a video interaction with that resident to really understand what was going on, right? And be able to look at like, okay, there's a plumbing issue, it's leaking. I know I need that part before I send the truck out. Sure. And what they were actually able to do is reduce their truck rolls by 40%.
That's huge.
So huge. And just not only did it improve the customer satisfaction because you're not having to send somebody out and then, they've got to come back another time because they don't have the right tools or part to repair what's going on. But it also saved them a bunch of money. Because if you think about reducing, every time they roll the truck, that's hundreds of dollars, not just of employee time, but So I love that story because it really brings to life all the solutions that we've got in our portfolio.
Well, and I think, part of that story too, as you share it, obviously there's an economic upside. I mean, they're getting more repairs done right the first visit. So obviously there's a huge scale of opportunity there to be able to reduce costs and things of that nature. But I have to imagine from the consumer's perspective to actually get someone on video on the phone to be able to, I think that shows a level of care that you actually want to solve the problem. All too often, customer service doesn't go well in the customer's mind. They have to go through a series of things of that nature. And it can be frustrating. And in public housing, you might have an expectation it's not going to be an experience that's going to be, pleasant. But to know that someone's on the other end of the line on video and really cares about getting care out there, I think that had to be something that, had to delight customers and probably shock them to some degree.
Well, and if you think about that use case is applicable, how many times have you had Comcast come out to your house or AT&T or, your plumber or electrician and it's everything turns into this big project. So there's a lot of companies that can take advantage of that field service use case.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. As you have your current portfolio of products out right now, any new products on the horizon that potentially you want to mention?
So we just announced one that we're incredibly excited about a couple of weeks ago called Engage. So this is really, I think that knowledge worker use case that a lot of us have always tried to solve for with a contact center solution. It was kind of square peg, round hole, but it's a person who is mobile first in their interaction, not somebody who traditionally sits in a contact center, but they're interacting with your customer.
Right.
And so you need to have analytics and you need to be able to route interactions to them in a way that you can track and manage and deliver an optimal experience. And to me, this is going to be a game changer for us because we're really focused on blurring those lines
Yes.
Of UCaaS, CCaaS, CPaaS. Like if we've done our work in a few years, those terms will start to go away.
Wow. And so that product is called Engage.
Engage, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. Lisa, I have a couple more questions for you. Have you had any mentors in your life?
Oh gosh, yes, I have. I've had several, but two that I think have probably mentored me in ways that really drove the trajectory of my career. One is a woman named Debbie Wishart that I worked with when I was at Verizon, and she was the one who really saw in me the ability to be a sales leader before I probably saw it in myself. And so I still keep in touch with her today. And then Alice Catwan, who I actually was the woman who hired me at Genesys. Incredible sales leader, just really has an amazing career herself. But she really, nurtured and developed me and gave me the advice and guidance when I needed it, whether I asked for it or I didn't ask for it. And those are relationships that I think are really important. And I always say to people that I mentor or people that just, approach me about sales careers or even outside of sales, you should always seek out a mentor. Yes. Ask somebody. If you don't know somebody, ask a friend, and it doesn't have to be somebody from your industry either.
Sure.
Find somebody that you look up to or you think has really done incredible things that you want to emulate and seek that out, because I think it really allows you to think about things and get a perspective that you may not have.
No, I so agree. I'd say more than 90% of the guests on the Growth Fire podcast, I ask the mentor question every time. 90% absolutely firmly said, yes, I do. And I think you're sharing it. It doesn't have to be from your industry. It really doesn't. When I reflect on my own mentorship, I started a digital advertising agency before digital advertising agency was a term. I started building 3-page websites for $500 when nobody had a website before.
Yeah.
There was no mentors in my industry to look towards, right?
Yeah.
My number one mentor was an incredible commercial real estate veteran. But I looked at the charisma that he had, how he carried himself, how he articulated, how he could command attention in a room, how he prepared, how he read, he consumed a lot of information. He was very knowledgeable. And because of all of that and his charisma and things of that, he was very effective at any room that he could walk in where he was a subject matter expert. And that reflected on me. I was like, wow, he's just very smart, very articulate, and people want to listen, so to speak. And in your mentorships, mentioned that you just mentioned, was there ever a formal conversation like, hey, would you mentor me or anything like that? Or was it kind of just a non-spoken but realized benefit?
I think it was a non-spoken realized benefit because they were people that I had the pleasure and privilege of working with.
Yes.
But I have, since those two stand out so much for me, but I've also sought out people, maybe not as like a formal mentor, but just asking for advice and guidance or can I soundboard something off of you? I'm thinking about doing this. And, I've had people that I've done that with that maybe I've had to be more overt with, but yes. I was fortunate that I had two very strong female leaders in my life that I could emulate.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think that's common amongst most guests here is that mentors help bring more out of you than you don't know of yourself. You're talking about your career at Verizon where, she saw you as a sales leader before you saw that in yourself. And I think that's what mentors can help you do. They can help you develop a vision for what your opportunity may be that you don't have. It hasn't made it to your radar yet to know those things are where, but others either see it in you or others see opportunities you don't see because they have experience that you don't have quite yet. And that's what mentors can do is they can help educate you above and beyond what your current radar or landscape is that you have visibility of and help you dream bigger and get there more successfully.
It's very powerful.
Lisa, last question I have for you. Where do you get your inspiration to? You're managing a global sales team, a big company. Where do you get your inspiration from these days?
Well, I love to read. I'm a big reader of books. I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan, so I read all his books. Some of them I read multiple times. I like John Barrow's podcast, Being in Sales. I was exposed to him many years ago, and I do listen to his podcast that he has. And I clearly am going to become a fan of Growth Fire now, too, because I've checked out some of your podcasts. So I love that.
Yes. What a form of inspiration on the Growth Fire podcast.
Yes.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for contributing your time and today, sharing your stories and insights. It's been a pleasure to have you. I'm sure there are going to be some people that might want to reach out to you after they've had an opportunity to listen to what we've talked about today. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and as well as you can always email me at 8x8. So lisa.martin@8x8.com.
Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest on the Growth Fire podcast. We appreciate you sharing your experiences, and we wish you ongoing success with your journey.
Thank you, Kevin. I really enjoyed this today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.